The sound came 3 times, sharp and desperate, against the wooden door. Margaret Calloway froze with her hand on the stove, the smell of burnt coffee filling the small kitchen. No one knocked at midnight, not in Crestwood, not unless something was very wrong. She grabbed the lantern from the table, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. Through the window, she saw nothing but darkness and the faint outline of the barn against the star-scattered sky. Her late husband's rifle hung above the door, but her hands were already reaching for the latch instead. Some instinct deeper than fear told her this wasn't danger, not the kind that came with guns anyway. The door swung open. A little girl stood on the porch, no more than 7 years old, wearing a nightgown so thin Margaret could see her shaking through it. Her feet were bare and bleeding. Her face was streaked with tears and dirt. "Please," the child whispered, "Mama needs help." Margaret didn't think. She pulled the girl inside, wrapped her in the quilt from the back of the rocking chair, and knelt down to meet her eyes. "Where's your mama, sweetheart?" "The wagon, we crashed. She's stuck and the baby's coming and Papa's." The girl's voice broke into sobs. Okay, it's okay now." Margaret's mind raced. She'd been alone on this ranch for 8 months since Thomas died, and she'd gotten used to the silence, the emptiness, the way days could pass without seeing another soul. But she hadn't forgotten how to move fast when someone needed her. "What's your name?" "Lily." "I'm Margaret. How far is the wagon, Lily?" "I don't know. I ran and ran. There were trees and a creek and—" Margaret stood, already pulling on her boots. The girl had come from the east, probably from the old trail that cut through the valley. That trail was rough even in daylight, full of ruts and rocks that could flip a wagon if you weren't careful. In the dark, it would be deadly. She lit 2 more lanterns and grabbed the medical supplies she kept in the cabinet: clean cloth, whiskey, thread, her grandmother's bone needle. Thomas had always said she worried too much, keeping all this ready for emergencies that might never come. But Thomas was gone, and this emergency was here. "Can you ride a horse?" Margaret asked. Lily shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "That's all right. You're going to ride with me." Margaret had 1 horse left, a grey mare named Stella who was more stubborn than smart but steady in a crisis. She saddled her fast, her fingers working the buckles from memory even as her mind spun through everything that could go wrong. A woman in labor, stuck in a wagon, somewhere in the dark. A husband who hadn't come with his daughter, which meant he was either dead or too hurt to move. She lifted Lily onto the saddle, climbed up behind her, and wrapped one arm tight around the girl's small body. "You're going to show me the way, okay? You're very brave, Lily. Your mama's lucky to have you." The girl nodded against her chest. They rode into the darkness, the lantern swinging from Margaret's free hand and casting wild shadows across the ground. Stella picked her way carefully over the uneven terrain, her ears swiveling at every sound. The night was cold enough that Margaret could see her breath, and she felt Lily shivering despite the quilt. "Tell me about your mama," Margaret said, trying to keep the girl talking, keep her focused. "Her name's Anna. She makes the best biscuits, and she sings all the time, even when she's tired." Lily's voice was small but steady now. "Papa said we were going to Sacramento. He said there was land there, and we'd have our own house, and I could have a room with a real window." "That sounds nice." But the wheel broke. Papa was trying to fix it, and then Mama started crying and saying the baby was coming too soon, and Papa told me to run and find help, and I ran and ran, and I saw your light. "You did exactly right," Margaret said firmly. "Your papa would be proud." They reached the creek 15 minutes later, the water catching moonlight like scattered silver coins. Lily pointed downstream. "That way, near the big rock that looks like a face." Margaret urged Stella forward, scanning the darkness. The trees grew thicker here, their branches reaching overhead like fingers. An owl called somewhere close, and Stella snorted nervously. Then she saw it, the wagon, tilted at a terrible angle with its front wheel shattered and the back end jammed against a boulder. A man lay motionless near the wreckage, and even from a distance, Margaret could see the dark stains spreading across his chest. "Papa!" Lily screamed. "Hush now," Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. She slid down from the saddle and lifted Lily after her, setting her carefully on the ground. "Stay here with Stella. Hold onto her reins, okay? I need to check on your mama." She approached the wagon slowly, her boots crunching on broken wood and scattered belongings. Clothes, a tin pot, a child's doll with a torn dress, all the pieces of a family's life spread across the dirt like prayers that hadn't been answered. The woman inside the wagon was young, maybe 25, with sweat-soaked hair plastered to her forehead. Her eyes found Margaret's, wild with pain and fear. "My husband. I'll check on him, but first, let's get you out of there." The wagon had landed in such a way that Anna was wedged between a trunk and the side wall, her legs trapped beneath splintered wood. Margaret set down the lantern and assessed the situation with the cold practicality her grandmother had taught her. The baby was coming whether anyone was ready or not. She could see that in the way Anna's body tensed and released, tensed and released. They had minutes, maybe less. "I'm going to move this trunk," Margaret said. "It's going to hurt." "Everything hurts," Anna gasped. Margaret braced herself and shoved. The trunk scraped across the wagon bed with a sound like breaking teeth, and Anna screamed. But she was free. Margaret pulled her out as carefully as she could, half carrying her to a flat spot near the creek where the ground was soft with moss. "Lily," Anna's voice was desperate. "She's safe. She's right over there with my horse. She's the bravest little girl I've ever met." Anna's face crumpled. "James, my husband, is he?" Margaret had seen enough death to recognize it. The man's chest had been crushed by the wagon, and he'd bled out fast. But she couldn't tell this woman that, not now, not while she was fighting to bring a new life into the world. "Let me focus on you first," Margaret said quietly. She worked quickly, spreading out the clean cloth, washing her hands in the creek water, talking Anna through each breath. The contractions were coming hard and fast now, and Anna's grip on Margaret's hand was strong enough to leave bruises. "I can't do this without him," Anna sobbed. "Yes, you can. You're doing it right now." "I don't want to." "I know," Margaret's throat tightened. She thought of Thomas, of the morning she'd found him cold in their bed, his heart finally giving up after months of fighting. She thought of all the days after when she'd wanted to give up too, when getting out of bed felt impossible, and the silence of the ranch was so heavy she could barely breathe under it. "I know it feels like you can't, but you're stronger than you think." The baby came just as the first hint of dawn touched the eastern sky. A girl, small but loud, announcing herself to the world with a cry that made even Stella whinny in response. Margaret wrapped her in the cleanest cloth she had and placed her in Anna's trembling arms. "You did it," Margaret whispered. Anna stared down at her daughter, tears streaming down her face, and for a moment there was only wonder there. Then reality crashed back. "James, I need to see James." Margaret had covered him with a blanket while Anna was focused on the baby. She helped Anna to her feet, supporting most of her weight, and walked her slowly to where he lay. Anna sank down beside him, the baby cradled against her chest, and let out a sound that wasn't quite a scream and wasn't quite a sob, something raw and animal and broken. Lily appeared at Margaret's elbow, her small hand finding Margaret's. "Is Papa sleeping?" "Yes, honey," Margaret said, because what else could she say? "He's sleeping." They buried James Cartwright at sunrise, near the big rock that looked like a face. Margaret said a prayer she half remembered from childhood, while Anna stood silent, the baby nursing beneath her shawl. Lily placed wildflowers on the mound of earth, purple and yellow blooms that looked too cheerful for the occasion. The ride back to Margaret's ranch took twice as long, with Anna weak from blood loss and the newborn fussing every half hour. Margaret fashioned a sling from her shawl to keep the baby secure against Anna's chest, and Lily rode in front this time, her small body finally relaxing into sleep against Margaret's stomach. When they reached the house, the sun was high and bright, making everything look normal: the weathered barn, the chicken coop, the vegetable garden Margaret had let grow wild these past months. She helped Anna inside, settled her in the bedroom that had been hers and Thomas's, and brought water and bread, and the last of the venison stew she'd made 3 days ago. I don't have anywhere to go, Anna said quietly, staring at the wall. You're staying here, Margaret said. It wasn't a question. I can't, we're strangers. You don't owe us anything. Maybe not. Margaret sat down in the chair beside the bed. Her bones ached with exhaustion, but her mind was clear. But that little girl knocked on my door at midnight, and I answered. That means something. Anna's eyes filled with tears again. I don't even know your name. Margaret Calloway, my husband Thomas and I built this ranch 12 years ago. He died last winter. Heart gave out. She said it simply, the way she'd learned to say it, without letting the grief pull her under. I've been alone here since then. House is too big for just me. We have nothing, no money, no. You have 2 daughters who need you. That's everything. Anna looked down at the baby in her arms, then over at Lily, who had curled up in the corner on a pile of quilts, already fast asleep. I don't know how to do this without him. You do it one day at a time, Margaret said. Some days you do it 1 hour at a time, and some days you do it 1 breath at a time, but you do it. The words hung in the air between them, and Margaret realized she was talking to herself as much as to Anna. She'd spent 8 months moving through her days like a ghost, keeping the ranch running because she didn't know what else to do, speaking to no one, letting the silence wrap around her like a shroud. But something had shifted in the night. That knock at midnight had cracked something open inside her. Anna stayed, not because she had a choice, though that was true, but because Margaret made it clear she was wanted. The first week was hard. Anna cried often, sudden storms of grief that would hit her while she was feeding the baby or folding laundry or staring out the window at the mountains. Lily was quiet, too quiet, and she followed Margaret everywhere like a shadow, afraid to let her out of sight. But slowly, the house came back to life. Anna had a good hand with bread, and soon the smell of fresh baking filled the kitchen every morning. Lily helped feed the chickens and collect eggs, her small face lighting up when she found one still warm from the nest. The baby, whom Anna named Grace after her grandmother, settled into a routine of eating and sleeping and occasionally wailing at 3 in the morning. Margaret found herself looking forward to breakfast, to the sound of voices, to the way Lily would pepper her with questions about everything from why chickens couldn't fly very well to where the stars went during the day. She taught the girl how to milk the cow, how to mend a fence, how to tell if a storm was coming by watching the way the wind moved through the grass. 3 weeks after that midnight knock, a man rode up to the house. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a badge pinned to his vest and a face that had seen too much sun. Margaret met him on the porch, her arms crossed. "Help you." "Sheriff Tom Bradley from Ridgerton. I'm looking for a family, Cartwrights. They were headed west through here. You seen them." Margaret's jaw tightened. She knew what this was. Someone had reported the family missing, or maybe someone had found the abandoned wagon. "Why are you looking?" James Cartwright had debts, serious debts. Man he owed came around asking questions, said Cartwright skipped town with his family and the money he borrowed. The sheriff's eyes were sharp, said if I find the widow, the debt passes to her. Behind Margaret, the door opened. Anna stood there, Grace in her arms, her face pale but steady. "How much?" $300. Anna laughed, a bitter sound. "I have nothing. My husband is dead. Everything we owned was in that wagon." "Then I'm afraid you'll need to work it off, ma'am. Man who's owed has a right to collect." "She's not going anywhere," Margaret said flatly. The sheriff looked between them. "You related?" "Does it matter?" "If you're vouching for her debt, then yes, it matters." Margaret felt Anna's hand on her shoulder, a silent plea to stop. But something had been building in Margaret's chest these past weeks, something fierce and protective and more alive than she'd felt in months. She thought of Lily's knock at midnight, of the way Anna had fought to bring Grace into the world, of the sound of laughter in her house again. "I'm not vouching for anything," Margaret said, "but she's under my roof and she stays under my roof. If that man wants his money, he can come talk to me about it." The sheriff studied her for a long moment, then he tipped his hat. "I'll let him know, but ma'am, $300 is a lot of money. He's not going to just forget about it." After he left, Anna sank down onto the porch steps. I can't let you do this, I won't. Too late, Margaret sat down beside her. I already did. You don't understand. The man James owed, his name is Dalton. He's not the kind of man who forgives debts. He'll come here, he'll take whatever he can. Let him try. Margaret. Listen to me. Margaret turned to face her, and the words came out raw and honest. Thomas and I, we lost 3 Barbies, 3. The third one nearly killed me. After that, the doctor said I couldn't have more. This house was supposed to be full of children, full of noise and mess and life. Instead, it was just the 2 of us, and then it was just me. I've been rattling around in here like a ghost for months, and I didn't even realize how much I'd given up on everything until you and your girls showed up. You knocked on my door asking for help, but the truth is, you saved me just as much as I saved you. Anna's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to repay you. Then don't, just stay. They sat in silence for a while, watching Lily chase butterflies in the yard. Grace made small snuffling sounds against Anna's chest. The sun was warm on Margaret's face, and she thought about how strange life was, how it could take everything from you and then give you something completely different in return, something you never knew you needed. Dalton came 2 weeks later. He arrived at noon with 2 men, all of them armed, all of them wearing the kind of expressions that said they were used to getting what they wanted. Margaret met them in the yard, her rifle across her arms. Mrs. Calloway, I presume. You presume correctly. Dalton was a thin man with calculating eyes. I'm here for Anna Cartwright. She owes me money. Her husband owed you money. He's dead. Debt doesn't die with the man who made it. According to what law? According to my law. Dalton's smile was cold. Now I can take the woman, or I can take something of equal value, but I'm not leaving empty-handed. Margaret heard the door open behind her. Anna stepped out, and Margaret wanted to scream at her to get back inside, to hide, to protect herself and her children. But Anna walked past her, her spine straight, her chin up. Take me, Anna said. Leave her alone. Leave my daughters alone. I'll work off the debt. No, Margaret's voice cracked like a whip. Margaret, please. I said no. Margaret stepped between Anna and Dalton. You want money? I'll give you money. $200 cash right now. That's all I have. The rest you'll have to consider lost to bad luck and a dead debtor. Dalton's eyes narrowed. I said 300. And I said 200 is all you're getting. Take it or leave it. The standoff stretched out, tense and fragile. Margaret could feel her heart pounding, could see Dalton's men shifting their weight, hands hovering near their guns. She thought about Thomas, about all the years they'd saved and scraped together to build something good. That money had been for emergencies, for the future, for all the things that might go wrong. This was one of those things. Fine, Dalton said finally, 200, but if I find out you've been lying about having more. You won't, Margaret lowered her rifle. Wait here. She went inside, her hands shaking as she pulled up the loose board near the fireplace and retrieved the small metal box where she and Thomas had kept their savings. $240, their entire security, the buffer between them and disaster. She counted out 200, left the 40 for Anna and the girls, and went back outside. Dalton took the money, counted it twice, and tucked it into his coat. Pleasure doing business with you, Mrs. Calloway. Get off my land. He tipped his hat mockingly and rode away, his men following. Margaret watched until they were specks on the horizon, until she was sure they were really gone. Then her legs gave out, and she sat down hard in the dirt. Anna knelt beside her, crying, You didn't have to do that. That was everything you had. No, Margaret said softly, everything I have is right here. That night after the girls were asleep, Margaret and Anna sat on the porch with cups of weak tea. The stars were brilliant overhead, scattered across the sky like salt spilled on a black table. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. I'll find a way to pay you back, Anna said. I don't want you to pay me back. I want you to stay here and help me run this ranch. I want Lily to grow up strong and Grace to learn how to ride a horse. I want this house to feel like a home again. Margaret paused. I want to stop feeling like I'm just waiting to die. Anna reached over and took her hand. Then we'll stay, as long as you'll have us. Forever, then. They sat together in the comfortable silence that had grown between them, two women who had lost everything and somehow found each other in the process. Margaret thought about that knock at midnight, about the choice she'd made to open the door instead of reaching for the rifle. It was such a small thing, really, one moment, one decision, but it had changed everything. Inside the house, Grace started to cry. Anna stood, squeezed Margaret's shoulder and went to tend to her. Margaret stayed on the porch, looking out at the land she and Thomas had built together. She could feel him here still, in the fence posts he'd set, in the barn he'd raised, in the wind that moved through the grass. But she wasn't haunted by him anymore. She was held by him, supported by all the love they'd shared and all the work they'd done. Thank you, she whispered to the night, to Thomas, to whatever force had brought Lily to her door. The stars didn't answer, but they didn't need to. Margaret already knew what she needed to know. Life was full of endings, but it was full of beginnings too. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, one person's desperate knock at midnight could save two families from drowning in their grief. She finished her tea, stood up, and went inside to the home that was finally, truly, alive again.